that voice.
Yeah, so I'm ready. The one thing that
do you want to try sharing? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to show it towards the end, kind of like I did last time.
Perfect. Okay.
Or maybe in the middle. I don't know. It's just the taboo. I don't know if you've seen it. It's the taboo video about Standing Rock. Patrick, are you going to talk a little bit beforehand or?
So Gurdeep will introduce you, and
okay.
For everyone else, we'll let them know how to ask questions, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, oh, there she is. Gurdeep, whenever you're ready.
Oh, we're ready? Okay, perfect. Okay, let's do this. Let me make sure I've got my information. All right. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I should say good after Zoom, everyone. I think that's my new line there. It is so awesome to have such a wonderful turnout today for our virtual event this afternoon. But before we begin, we just want to give acknowledgement for the land where our campus sits on. This land on which we inhabit is physically situated in the original ancestral homelands. We pay respect to these people, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the physical diaspora. So thank you for that. Also, a very big thank you to Patrick Stump, Patrick Wave. He's our coordinator for student activities, and thank you for your work on helping us get Lakota here today. And Lakota and I were just talking earlier, it's been about 15 years since we first had the honor of just meeting each other, and it was when she came to Fresno City College, and about 4 years ago, we had an opportunity to bring her back here to Clovis Community College, and we talked about a very special ceremony that we held towards the end of her presentation, and maybe she'll bring that up a little later. Lakota is a highly respected organizer, community leader, and elder who has been a part of the Native American struggles for the past 4 decades. She first became an accomplished speaker as a youth and representative of the early American Indian movement's We Will Remember Survival School on the Pine Ridge Reservation, which was established out of the 1973 Wounded Knee occupation. She has continued her activism over the years, working with the International Women Treaty Council, Women of All Red Nations, Idle No More, Indigenous Women's Network, Lakota Traditional Birthing Project, and OATE, a Native organization working to see the lives and histories of Native peoples are portrayed honestly through her books. In addition to keynotes and presentations, she has conducted workshops, trainings nationwide for youth and adults who work with youth across lines of gender, race, and age to stop violence, as well as workshops on unlearning racism, sexism, and other social oppressions. Currently, Lakota works in health promotions, focusing on diabetes prevention, which leads to looking beyond the obvious food and exercise aspect of prevention. Lakota focuses on the healing of intergenerational historical trauma, which are direct effects of systemic genocide. She is a recipient of a Brave-Hearted Woman Award presented by Mills College in Oakland, California, and a Sisters of Fire Award presented by the Women of Color Resource Center to leading women of color activists and artists for their outstanding commitments to social justice. Lakota is also featured in the 2018 documentary, Warrior Women. Friends, please welcome Lakota Harden.
Hi, everybody. The first thing I'd like to do is, when I look at my screen, first of all, I've traveled everywhere trying to do what I can to help. And my prayer right at the beginning of every, I settle down and I get my sage and I look at the trees and I drink some water and I ask all of our relatives, help me to say what will best help you on your path. So what I'd like to ask you to do just for a few seconds is there's 3 pages of black boxes that I'm looking at. And I want to connect with you. So if everybody could just turn on your camera, I don't care if you're, still laying in bed. I don't care. I just want to see you so I can connect with you. So if everybody turn on your cameras just for a few seconds so I could look at you. If you would do that for me. And I just want to see your faces and see all these beautiful people. Hi. I hope you're all doing well today. And I am so excited. My elders, people that have taught me said, this is our first time. And every time we come together in this configuration, it's a sacred time. Every time we gather, there is different medicine because we all bring our ancestors with us. We all bring so much with us and we don't even recognize it most of the time. The speech that I did yesterday is not like today because you are here, because we are here together. So I want to just take a moment. You can turn off your cameras now if you want. I looked at your faces. You're all amazingly beautiful. And I want you to think about those ancestors. We're going to take some time to just say thank you. And I appreciate Gurdeep. Gurdeep, the one thing is 40 years ago, every place I would fly to, I would ask, where are the indigenous people from this land? And 98% of the time, there weren't any. And I'd say, okay, well, who were the people of this land? 100% of the time, nobody knew unless they were from this land. Right. So I appreciate now, here we are 40 years later, almost everywhere I go, everywhere I talk to is acknowledging the people of the land. And so I always acknowledge any of you that are on here that come from indigenous community. And thank you. I say thank you to you for being able to survive genocide. And then I take it a step further because all of us, no matter where we come from, our ancestors went through some difficult times. They had to give up their languages. They had to give up their names. They had to train their children to not be so much of themselves so that they could be safe out there. And it doesn't matter which generation we come from, we all went through it to come to this country. If you look back in the early days, whoever the most recent immigrants were the ones that were targeted for oppression. So all of our ancestors went through a lot. And I want to just take a moment to start together right now. And this is something that we should do, that you can do anytime you come together with people. Even if you don't do it openly like I am, you can do it in your mind. But for us to just close our eyes, or if we don't have to, you have choices on anything. You don't have to do anything, right? And just picture your parents that gave you life, where you got your genes, where you got your upbringing, if it was an auntie or uncle or grandma or somebody who adopted you. Picture all of them and just in your mind, say thank you to them. Thank you for giving you life, for bringing you here, for whatever it was, whatever hardships it was, whatever beauty it was. All of the different pieces made you who you are today. And then let's go a step further and think of your grandparents. So there's eight of them now, right? And as we go further back, your great grandparents, pretty soon we can't quite see their names, their faces. And let's just think about them anyway. Imagine what they must have looked like. Imagine the time they were in, what they had to do. How many of us think about our great grandparents? And just take some time to say thank you to all of them. Now you got a room full of people, right, in your mind. And then you go further up, your great grandparents. Now, they could be so many different kinds of races and backgrounds. They could be on other parts of the continent. They could be on other parts of the world. The stories that they have are all in you. So let's say thank you to them. And also say thank you to those beyond, 7 generations ago. Because in the end, they were all thinking about us. They were all thinking about the future of what they worked and strived for. And when you open your eyes, I want you to look and see that there are other people together, and with all of our ancestors, there's a whole bunch of us. And I say thank you to them, because here we are. And if you feel the energy between your hands right now, if everybody just wants to do this a little bit, it's really strong. And that's that life force that comes from them and lives through you. And when you open your heart, because you're thinking about your ancestors, your heart is open, your energy is high. And we say thank you for that. I also want you to think about when you look in the mirror. When you look in the mirror, do you say, and you could type it in the chat if you want. When you look in the mirror, what's the first thing you say? And be honest. Oh, we disabled the chat, right? I don't know.
You know, I'm going to turn it on right now.
Okay. Yeah. Ugh. Okay. Oh my God, I'm old, right? I need to lose weight. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's always criticism. And that's just the point I wanted to make it. People don't have to. Yep. I'm tired. The first thing we do is, and thank you for those who wrote in the chat, is we criticize ourselves, right? This is too big. I got to put on my makeup. I got to fix this. I need to work out. All of these criticisms of us. But what I want you to know and remember, and I'm sure some of you know this already, is I spent years when I was younger as a kid, as a Native kid at boarding school with other Native kids, being made fun of. In our language, the word for nose is pasu. That was my nickname. I got made fun of because of my nose. I hated my nose. When I was in 8th grade and I had my 8th grade graduation, my mother said, "What do you want for graduation?" And I said, "I want a nose job." And that's when nose jobs were new back in the late 70s, right? Or early 70s. And when I realized I could actually change it because I was made fun of so much. And I spent a lot of time wishing I looked different, you know? And I'm sure a lot of us do, especially at that age. But I remember mom saying, "Well, we can't really afford it right now." And she gave me some reason. And then we sat down and we had this big Curtis book, this photographer at the turn of the century who traveled across this continent, Turtle Island, and took pictures in black and white pictures, sepia tones, that of my ancestors. And we had that on the table. It was always there on the coffee table. And I remember we would sit down and look at it. And as we would look at it, it was a bonding time for us. And she would say, "Oh, look how beautiful she is. Look how beautiful he is. Look at their nose." And I said, "Okay, mom, I get it. I get what you're doing. This nose comes from my ancestors." But that's for all of us. You look in the mirror and you look at your nose and you think, okay, this comes from who? You know, your cheekbones, your lips, your eyes, your eyebrows, your thighs, your hips, your arms, your hands. I have my exact feet of my mother. I remember seeing her feet a lot when I was growing up, you know, whether she was sitting down or laying on the sofa or whatever. And I have her exact feet. I can sit here and look down at my feet, and these are her feet, you know, exactly how they're shaped at this age. Well, I don't know, she didn't live this long, but my point is every single part of you comes from one of your ancestors. And when we think about what they went through to survive, we all have their stories in us. We all have them in our DNA. And a great teacher of mine, John Trudell, who there's a movie called Trudell. And if you Google or YouTube search John Trudell, he did a lot of music. He left a lot of good words with us. And he coined the word DNA, descendants and ancestors. And he said that long ago when I was young. And it fit right in with all the other teachings that I was getting as a young person, with a conscious and aware decolonized family. So I was born into this when Gurdeep was reading the beginning and I was looking off into the trees and connecting with the ancestors that are here with me right now. I'm really grateful because people have asked me in the past, how did you become an activist, because that's the new word, right? An activist. And if any of you are activists, you know that you do it because your heart is in it, because you're compelled to do it, because you don't want your Black brother or sister being treated badly, because you don't want them to plow down, forests so that we can have more oil or whatever the corporations can get richer on. All of us do this because we know in our heart and in our DNA that we are here to protect, we are here to take care of not only the planet, but each other. So that's what I want you to do. When you look in the mirror, you see your ancestors. Thank them for your nose. Thank them for your cheeks. Thank them for this long braids that I have. I hate dealing with it, especially at my age. It's harder because it gets tangled easier. It's different texture. But I have to remember to be grateful, because right now we're in a time that fear has been running things. Fear has been the main bonding agent that a lot of us have been in. And for us as Indigenous people, there's a couple of things. I remember when Trump was first voted in 4 years ago, and people were panicking and Facebook was going crazy and people were freaking out. And my daughter, who's had a really tough life, like a lot of us have, just said, we survived genocide. Our ancestors have survived annihilation, smallpox blankets, massacres, having our language taken away, having our families torn apart, being sent off to boarding school, which is one of my experiences. It's part of my legacy and my family. All of these things have happened and we still survived because we have several things that are gifts for us. And that's a little bit of what I wanted to share today. First of all, is the one that I told you about. I hope that that is something that you will commit to do every day when you look in the mirror. Actually, I don't look in the mirror that much. I hope my hair is good. Because there's also a song by Sweet Honey and the Rock that's called My Grandmother's Eyes. And it was about they didn't have mirrors in their house. And every day when they left, their grandmother would check and see how they looked before they went off to school. And she would tell them how beautiful they were, how amazing, unique, and special they were. And all of us needed that as child. All of us need that now. And we need to do that for each other. We need to do that for the young kids. We need to do that for the little ones. Because it's a crime that the cosmetics industry and fashion industry and all these things sell us these inhumane. It's like, who can look like that all the time, right? Everything on television, everything shows us and sells us something else. But we need to remember that whatever we're made up of, it's our ancestors, and they were amazing. And how do we live in a way that makes our ancestors proud? We make sure that they who lived through us, that we honor them by honoring ourselves. So that's the first thing that I want you to remember, is how you talk to yourself is how you're talking to them as well. The second thing is that relationship, the relationship with not only people, but with the earth itself. She was given a break this last 8 months. We've been complaining about not being able to go. For me, I have this meme that says it shows the world on fire. You've seen that one probably. And then it shows Will Ferrell yelling something. And so it shows the world on fire and he goes, "When can I go to concerts again?" For me, that's the hardest part is I always say that music has been my lifelong lover, because music has always been in my life. And from the time I was a little girl, and if you don't know the history of boarding school system, this is the part that's hard about Zoom, because I would ask you that, have you heard of? And then people could raise their hand and I could know if I should go into it. But I'll go into it anyway. When they tried to get rid of us and move us off the land, the manifest destiny, which I'm sure you've studied, hopefully, one of the things they did when they realized they couldn't kill us all, they took our children and kidnapped our children and put us in little concentration camps. And I call it that because I had lived in one. I was 7 years old. It happened to my mother, it happened to my grandmother, and my great grandmother was a Episcopal, I'm losing the word right now, pastor, like a pastor, a priest. Back at the turn of the century, when first of all, women weren't priests, and second of all, Native people weren't priests yet, but she became one because that's where they took our children. And she did whatever, prayed, did whatever she had to do to pass into the role of being able to be where our children are. And I always think about her. Her name was Agnes Archon, and she was 97 years old. She was my great great grandmother. So when I was 7, if you can imagine this, I was 7 in 1964, and I was in 2nd grade, and I was put in this boarding school. This was the school system for our children, for our people at the time. And it was pretty horrific. You know, when people think of boarding school, they think of different kinds of boarding schools, but ours was run by priests and nuns. And the whole purpose was to assimilate us. And they did it in a really horrific way. And nobody was monitoring them. So there's a movie called, oh shoot, my memory is bad that way. And I wanted to send Patrick a list of links of things that I would talk about, but it was called something, The Horse. Gordy, do you know that horse movie that's out right now? It's about boarding school, and it's on Netflix. It's on a lot of the things. I'll think of it anyway. But it shows the boarding school system and what it was like. It's a really good portrayal of that. It was very hard for me to watch. But I went through that, and sometimes my great grandmother, who was in her 70s at the time, would come and get me on the weekends, and they would check us out. We could go home, and I would go stay with her. And during the winter, she was keeping my great great grandmother, who was 97. Now this is the early 60s, where not everybody had electric heat or central heating. So a lot of our people had wood stoves, and they would keep the fire going and build it so it would burn all night, you know, as much as it could, but it would eventually go out and it would be cold, and they'd have to restoke the fire in the morning. So my grandmother, who was 97, she was old, you know, she was very like a bird, you know, she was very skinny and very old, close to 100. And I was, of course, this little chubby, warm body, the age of 7, and I loved her so much. And so I would sleep in the bed with her so I could help keep her warm, you know. And that's what I always think about back. Every time I think about my childhood or different things or what I learn about our people, everybody had a role. Everybody had a responsibility. And I worry about kids now because I saw my grandson yesterday, and he's a gamer. And I touched him, I held him, and I said, "You matter to me. It's important to me that you're here." And even though he goes, "Yeah, I know, Angie," but it's important to say it. It's important to look into their eyes and say it, because our old societies had that. Everybody had a role, and you know, everybody did something. Like an example is in our old days, and this goes to what my great grandma was saying, the teepee in the morning, you know, sometimes the snowstorm would be so bad, we'd be snowed in, but we had everything in there, you know. But on those mornings when we could go out every morning, the oldest daughter or the youngest daughter or the oldest son or somebody would go out and get the water, because we can't live without water, right? Mini Wachoni, water is life. Water is sacred. And they would go out and get the water from the stream, and they would sing a song. There was a water song, make an offering. That's key. That's number 2, make an offering. Don't expect something without making that offering. They'd make an offering, and it was usually a song, and they would talk to the water and say in their minds, you know, my grandma's hip hurts, or my dad's been worried, or, you know, you talk to the water and you ask that water for its help and take the water back. And in the teepee, when she'd come back with the water, the whole family would stop what they were doing and gather And together, they would drink that water one by one and put their minds in a state of gratitude, thanking this water for life, thanking this water, because you couldn't just turn on the faucet back then. So even now, when I turn on the faucet and fill this water bottle, I'm thanking this water. It's one of the things that I've done all my life because of this story. And we would thank the water, and it would heal us. It would help us in a way. Same with oxygen. When my grandmother was 97, going back to that, she would tell me these stories about what her life was like as a child, because it was pre-contact, pre-invasion. You know, it was just Lakota people, just Native people living the way we were meant to live, how we always lived. And she would tell me these stories. And I remember saying to her, I want to go there, because I was in this horrific boarding school where they were abusing us in every way possible. And she would say, we can't go there right now, Takoja. We can't go there right now, granddaughter, but we will. And then second thing that I remember the most is she would say, this is just temporary. In our language, there's a way to say that. This is just temporary. That the focus and the recent history, the memory that we have of the last 5 generations, 7 generations, has been pretty painful for Native people. The taking away of our homelands, taking away of our language, separating us, our healthcare, our medicines, our way of prayer, all of these things were taken from us. And most of our relatives, Indigenous people, don't remember that they were Indigenous. You know, there are people, and then the borders put up that had nothing to do with us, separating us from our relatives. We're all Indigenous. So that wall thing is just horrific. It's ridiculous, you know, because these are our relatives. This is their homeland. That we're all related. And that's the original way that we have always been. So she would talk about this place, and I would want to go there. And when she'd say, we're going to get there, I spent a lot of years as a young person, especially looking like this. I've always had big shoulders because my ancestors were buffalo tanning people. You know, they would honor the buffalo, and the buffalo would give its life. We'd have to hunt them. And we would use every single part of the buffalo for every tool, even the bladders. When I talked about the water, they would clean the bladders of the buffalo and use those to get water because they're waterproof, right? Use every part, but they would tan the hides. So I have big shoulders for a reason. I could drag a buffalo if I had to, right? Anyway, um, so she would talk about this time that was coming and where we've been and where we're going. And so as a little girl, and as I would get older, and as I was in different kinds of schools, I really went through a lot of not liking myself. I think that's why the first thing I talk about is how we need to get that back. It's a crime if we don't honor ourselves. But I spent a lot of years not. I used to feel sorry for people who had to look at me. That's how I felt about myself. I wouldn't look directly at people, especially good looking people, right? How many of you have done that where you think, oh no, that person's too good looking? Maybe you don't. Maybe that's not a thing, but it was for me. And I spent a lot of years not liking myself because of that early boarding school, being far away from my mother, being far away from my family, and being tortured, and all the other abuses. I don't want to say the words because they're a little horrific. But yeah, so I had spent the rest of my life trying to heal and heal from that. Unfortunately, a lot of our people, like I alluded to just now, don't know our history, don't know. They just came into this world and there's nothing reflected back to them about who we once were and who we still are. It's just what we see on the images on media and things like that. And that's why we have to hold on and grab on to people that aren't shown, that we become the messengers, that we become the voices, the truth reflection to our people around us. Instead of criticizing them, right? That's the thing, is especially social media stuff. I can't be on there very long. I can't believe how people jump to argue, jump to criticize, right? And so for me, what I would think every time I was going through things, I would think, you're only temporary. This is only temporary. This is only temporary, because that's what my great grandmother said. This is temporary. In the span of the centuries that we've been here, this is the amount of time of this government that we're living under, with all these rules that separate, divide, and exploit us, right? And so I would think that, and that helped me get through a lot. But then I started getting older, and I was like, well, when is this gonna happen? And in my mind, when I was young, I thought we would go back to the way we lived in teepees. We'd go back to that. But as I got older, I started to understand. And when I got to UC Berkeley, I had an incident where I left home. I left South Dakota. I felt all alone. I had 2 young children, and I left them with my sister so that I could go to Berkeley and get situated, get started, right? When you go away to college, or how it was in the past, you go away to college and you get your room or wherever you're going to live, and you establish your new life, right, as a student. And I was terrified. I was crying. I was in Berkeley, which is complete opposite of South Dakota or the Midwest even. And I kept thinking, oh, I just want to go home. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have come here. It was one of the first things that I was saying to myself. And I was so lonesome. There was so much homeless people. Everything was dirty. Nobody cared about each other. Nobody said hello. All of these city ways of being. Well, for me, it was hard. And so I remember walking down, and if you know UC Berkeley campus, there's a little stream. There's a stream that runs through it. There's beautiful trees. And I went and sat there and I cried. And that's when, I always tell this story because that's when those grandmothers came into my mind. And a vision isn't just, flute music and floating spirits and clouds and stuff. A vision is your voices of your ancestors talking to you when you're having your deep thoughts. And that's what meditation is about. That's what prayer is about, is when we have that still moment where we have deep thoughts, and what comes to mind is our ancestors talking to us, because they're in us, like I said. And they kind of scolded me in a way where they said, silly girl, you didn't bring yourself here. Because I was thinking, I made a mistake, right? You didn't bring yourself here. We brought you here. Every morning you open your eyes and you thank us for your day. You thank us for a new day, for the sun coming today. Thank us for this water. Thank us. And you ask for direction and protection. And that's my morning prayer, right? She goes, so we brought you here. You have to trust us. Trust that we're with you. Trust that you're here for a reason. And that helped me on my road. That helped me to trust everything that happens in a way that I can allow them in my life and allow them to help me make decisions. And all of you know that your gut instinct, like you'll say, you're leaving the house and you think, oh, I should bring this with me. I should bring this. And you think, oh, I won't need it, right? You doubt yourself, and then later something happens and you said, if I only had this, I could have fixed it, right? So that instinct, that's your ancestors. That's part of your connection, because the trees, everything around you, once you make that relationship with them, if you're struggling and you're having a tough time, go to a tree. Everyone's been heartbroken at some point, right? And the thing about heartbreak is nothing can fix it, right? You just got to feel crappy until you don't anymore, listen to sad songs and do all this stuff. I went to this tree and it took me a long time. It was years, actually. That's how deeply I love. And it was terrible. I'm so glad I made it through. We make it through, right? But there was this huge tree where I moved to that was outside, and I would come home from work or whatever, and I would stop at that tree and I would cry and hug that tree and beg that tree to help with my heart, and just sit at the base of that tree. And I made this relationship with this tree. And I didn't forget that once things were better, and once my heart felt good, and once I could think about him without feeling sad and wish him, truly wish him well, right? I went to that tree and I brought water and I brought, put a little food out and then just offered that tree, sang to it, gave thanks to it for helping me through. And none of this, you can't prove this stuff, right? That's the thing, is like people are now looking towards indigenous teachings, and science is proving things we've already always known. I remember going to Pioneers and the scientist was proving that water is alive and it reacts to us, and it reacts to things. This is years ago. And he was like, it was this new discovery, right? So things don't become valid until they're proven by science. For us, it's things we've always known. It's things that we've practiced. And that's why it's important. That's why Gurdeep and Patrick and whoever else worked to bring me here, because these perspectives are valid, they're important, and they mean something. We lived for centuries with the earth, taking care of the earth, and the earth took care of us. And it wasn't an easy, comfortable thing all the time, but there were times of comfort and there was times of hard work. It's a balance, and we have to have that balance, that give and take. So whenever you do ask for something, whenever you do want something, you need to think of what you can offer first. That's the third thing that I want you to remember. What's your offering first? Because we live in a society that's like, what about me? What do I get out of this? That's what we think of first, right? That's what we're taught to think of first. Unless you have grandparents or parents that were the opposite and held on to those original teachings from your family, from your old ways. That we need to be and figure out, how can I help? You walk into a room, what can I do to help first? That was always my teaching. I walk in and start serving something or start fixing something or start serving coffee, even if I didn't know anybody, and people would be surprised and oh, thank you. But what you put out into the world, what that energy that you have, what you put out into the world is what's going to come back to you. And all of you know this, you're working really hard on your studies. You're putting the energy and the effort for that degree, whatever you're planning for. I'm assuming it's degrees. But in our daily life, those offerings that you make in your mind and in your heart are the most important. And how you look and see yourself. Because going back to falling in love, everyone's fallen in love at least once, huh? Right? Most of the time in high school. When our feelings are everything, right? When you fall in love, what do you want? How do you feel when you go around to your friends? You want everyone else to be in love, right? You say, oh, it's so great. You should be in love. It's so great, right? So that also translates to our lives. If we feel good about ourselves, we want everyone else to feel good about themselves. We don't want anyone to hurt. Can you imagine if we lived in a society like that? I've thought about it a lot because I studied. I went back and, when I was younger, I looked at what happened in Europe. How could they do this to the planet? How could they do this? How did this happen? And I did study, and I won't go into that because that's a whole nother issue. But, I thought, well, where are their medicine people? Because that's what we have. This is all medicine. The oxygen is medicine. The trees are medicine. The plants, everything is medicine. It's healing for us. Happened to their medicine, and I learned about the burning times, and every Halloween we celebrate the witches, and they've been demonized, right, to be afraid of, when they were actually medicine women. If you study the history, you look back, the earth religions were there all around, and they were outlawed so they could be exploited. So the things that happened to us, taking away our way of prayer, outlawing our ceremonies, our language, our songs, it was meant to control us and put that fear in us instead. And all of us have that in our molecular memory. All of us have it somewhere. So even if we don't know why we're afraid of something, it came from someplace. Because it's not natural for us to be afraid all the time, to be afraid to sing, because singing itself is an offering. Creator gave you this beautiful voice to sing. And if you feel like you can't sing well, it's because you haven't done it a lot. You know, the beautiful singers that we have, they didn't just come out singing that way normally, they practiced. And what you put your mind to, what you put your effort into, what you ask for is that offering. So if I want my grandkids to be protected and safe, I go and help people with their kids, or I'll go and take care of elders because I want my elders to be cared for. You give something first, you take care of something first. These are the indigenous teachings. These are some of the ways. And there are a lot of organizations, a lot of people. I'm really grateful to everybody, all of you that are out there right now, because the last thing I want to talk about is my grandmother telling us, and in ceremony, not only her, but other teachings in my life, in my lifetime when I was young, that we will get there. We will get back to that. But we're going to go through a great purification first. And purification can mean a lot of things to you. You can, you know, if you think of the adjectives of what purification means, becoming whole again, right? We're in it right now. We're in this time of purification. And when I was a little girl, I read Grapes of Wrath. And when I heard this describe this time we're going to be in, that's going to be really, really hard. I pictured the Grapes of Wrath Dust Bowl. I don't know if you all read that, but it used to be required reading at one point. And pictured a Dust Bowl, and you know, I didn't picture the hate, the discord, the unrest, the uneasiness of what we're living in right now, the fear. We're in it right now. And that's why it's important for us, these basic things of making those relationships, of saying thank you, of making a relationship. And I always talk about oxygen because in 2013, during the Idle No More movement, Indians were having flash mobs all over the country, and people were joining us, bringing attention to the inhumane conditions that many, even now, Native people are living under because of the poverty, because of the exploitation, because of environmental racism, because of all these other bigger issues that I'm sure all you have to do is Google now and tell. And I was out there marching as I had always done. I would be in the marches, I'd be in the dances, singing, you know, singing at the drum is my joy. And then ultimately they would ask me to speak because one, I've been there, I've been through all this time, and then I was old. Well, maybe not that old, but you know, I was older, and they would ask the elder to speak, right? So I was out there marching and stuff, but what happened is in my own ceremonial life, in my own personal journey, I was told to step back, that there are plenty of people to march, that my focus was to be about taking care of myself. Because being raised in boarding school and doing chores and doing what the nuns say and beating myself up in my head, their voices were still in my head. I couldn't do this right. I was this, I was that, you know, just all the put downs. And I also was taught traditionally, you help elders, you help youth. And so I wasn't good at saying no to anything. I was running myself ragged for decades, running everywhere to do all these things. And I really didn't think about how it was affecting me. And as I got older, I started, you know, things got harder, and it was hard on me. But nobody notices that. We got to be our best ally. And then my knee went out, which, it's like, okay, now what? What could go wrong? Oh my God, my knee, you know? But I remember I would work out in the gym, and I remember laying on my back and pushing, you know, using my feet to push. And each push I would pray and say, thank you for this strong body, this buffalo hide tanning body, you know, thank you for this. Thank you for my life. And then my knee went out. And part of the lesson in that was I wasn't going to stop and take care of myself. My mind was so set in one way, like all of us have, right? they warned me, they said, you need to stop and take time for yourself and learn how to take care of yourself. And so because I didn't do it, my knee went out. It wasn't that I was bad, you know, that's what I thought first, right? What did I do wrong, right? We all have that reaction when something goes wrong. But instead, I learned and focused on meditation, focused on yoga, because I couldn't walk for about 6 months. And that's when I made the relationship with oxygen and realized, and any of you who do yoga or meditation, we breathe in the oxygen, you focus on the oxygen, and you send it to your knee. Every time I sat down, I sent the oxygen to my knee and I asked it to heal. And doctors are saying maybe we should do a knee replacement, blah, blah, blah. Well, now it's been, how many years has it been? 7 years. And I'm hiking around on this island in Sitka, Alaska. I can't walk miles and miles and miles, but I can walk a few miles. So it's the oxygen that helped heal my knee, the oxygen that helps heal my back. Whatever, if I'm having problems or if I start to get nervous, I stop and do the deep breathing and ask the oxygen to help me. And then you do something for somebody else. You do something to take care of something else. Go out and pick up some trash. I mean, there's so many ways to give back. There's so many ways to do things. And I just noticed the time. Remember I said I was going to try to leave more time for Q&A. But you got me going. Your ancestors got me going, right? And I am so grateful. This feeds me. You don't know how an old gal feels to have your attention, to have your respect, to be able to interact with you in this way is a joy for me. And I had been forgotten because I moved to Alaska in 2015 and people couldn't afford to bring me anymore. And people always say, oh, come visit you. And I say, okay, good. And then they see the flight prices, $700, $800 just to come here, and they're like, I don't think I can come this year, So far, no one's come. But now that we have Zoom, I'm able to do this again. So I want to thank you, Gurdeep and Patrick, and all of you who gave me this respect and this attention. And I thank your ancestors. And I want you to all thank them right now. This was a sacred time we're in. This is a sacred moment that we remember them and they remember us, and they're willing to come through us to become our descendants again, as we will someday, wherever that next life takes us. And I also want to acknowledge and remember all of those that we've lost. I know every day I hear of somebody I know that has passed from cancer or COVID or other things, suicide, every day, because I know a lot of people. So let's just acknowledge all those young spirits going on to the next world and remember them and the things that we learned and the things that they taught us. And we honor them by honoring ourselves, by looking in the mirror and saying, damn, you're good looking. You say that instead of ugh, right? Say, damn, you're good looking. Say it until you believe it, okay? Every day. And I thank you for this time. And I think we have some time for questions.
Well, thank you so much, Lakota. I think you have I don't know how many dry eyes are in the audience right now, but if we could just do, before we get to Q&A, a quick round of applause. Unmute yourself if you'd like to, and just give Lakota. Absolutely. So I am going to oops, I muted myself.
Patrick, you muted yourself.
Yes,
I
I
was going to
did.
say,
I
that
sure
was really
did.
impressive.
Mid sentence there. So if I'm going to reopen the chat. If you'd like to put in an encouraging message, how much you appreciated and how much you got out of this presentation, feel free to do so. If you have a question, please send the question to me. I'm going to queue those up for Lakota, and let me know if you would like to ask your question in person, or if you would prefer that I ask your question for you. So again, if you have a question, send it directly to me in the chat and let me know if you would like to ask in person, or if you would like to, if you'd like me to ask for you. And just 1 second, looks like Lakota stepped away for 1 moment.
And I was going to say, gosh, if you don't feel better after this, I don't know. That was some what we would call good medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have our first question, and it comes from Brandy White. Brandy, would you like to unmute yourself?
Thank you so much, Patrick. Lakota, I want to say thank you so much for doing this for us. I feel very refreshed, and I know a lot of this is it's good for me. But my question is, have you had a chance to write down these stories? Like, do you have a book or anything? Because my husband is Cherokee, my children are Cherokee, and unfortunately, due to my husband's great grandma being adopted, she was very young when she was adopted, and so we didn't get anything passed down. And I would love for my children to be able to connect with their heritage, but I just don't have those resources. So do you have anything like that?
No, I haven't. And thank you, Brandy, because this is my next step that I need to do is, well, first I need to make a PowerPoint, because all the speakers nowadays have PowerPoints and I'm like, I don't have one. But I need to write. Every time I'm telling a story, I have so many of them and I want to write them before I get them. But and there are websites, there's people, there's all kinds of information available online. Maybe read Wilma Mankiller's book. There's a lot of different things that you can do. But what I put in the chat just real quickly, my uncle wrote a book called Where White Men Fear to Tread, and it's about my family story and my grandma Aggie, who's in the book. I just want to mention that because that doesn't get read enough. But what I suggest, Brandy, and what I tell people, because all of the years people come up to me and they say, I have no idea what I am. I have no idea. My family didn't talk about it. I know I'm white, or I think we have some Irish, all of these different questions. And you make those offerings every day when you eat. You put, we used to have, for giveaways, I would give away little wooden bowls, because wood is natural, right? It comes from the earth. And every time we'd eat, we'd put a little bit of, just a pinch of food out and just set it outside, set it out with the intention. And you say, this is for my ancestors. Help me to learn more about you. And then you're walking and somebody's passing you and they drop something and you stop, you go, oh, here, you dropped this. You think it's just an accident, but this person, you sit and have coffee with them, or something comes and then you find out you're related, or then you find out this book they dropped was something that is going to help you. Trust that, put it out there, and just keep with that intention. And it might not happen right away. That's the thing, is we're also impatient in our society. I think about the patience our people had to have for decades to get to something, to be free, to be released, to be whatever it might be. The patience we have, and with that intention, and talk to them, make those offerings, help people, help other children, help the tribe, and not with this frenzy of I need. That's the problem when we're doing alliance building work. We have allies that come in that have the best intention, but they're so wounded that I have to spend my time, instead of working on what we're working on, taking care of their feelings, taking care of them, and it's not helpful to me, right? Does everyone understand that? There's books about how to be allies. I can't think of the names of the books right now, but there's so many of them. And so just put that intention every day. Maybe with your children, you do a water ritual like I talked about. You eat water, thank the water, and say, we want to know where we come from. We want to meet our ancestors in one way or another, right? Then you might find that out. You might find that. But that's what I would suggest as well as research. But it's more that intention and trust. They're already with you. They're already looking at your children and saying, you made it. You survived genocide. You're still here and you remembered us. That's what they're saying right now. Yay, you, right? Think of it that way. And they say, we're going to find out. We're going to get there. And in the end, I mean, that's all. I'm not trying to discount that. That's what I offer you. But in the end, what I'm finding out as I move further on this path, it really doesn't matter what our skin is like. What matters is who we are inside, and we really are all related, especially now in this time. We have to rely on each other. We have to help each other. We have to help each other heal, you know? And we have to heal ourselves too. So thank you for your question, Brandy. I appreciate it. And I wish you all well. I'll think of you in my prayers also in your family.
Thank you so much, Lakota.
Thank you, Lakota. Our next question comes from Sarah Martinez. Sarah, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
I recently found my real grandma, and she is native. Her tribe was in Arizona, and I've been trying to connect with her, but it's difficult because our culture is very different. How would, like, give me suggestions on how I could meet her culture in a way?
I think that's too broad of a question for me to answer. That's what I have to say. You know, it's kind of very general.
Yeah, or like
So,
how to just be in tuned with like my native background, because I'm like completely new to the.
okay, did you listen to my answer to Brandy's question?
Yeah, like that spoke to me, but yeah.
Well, think about it for a little bit, you know, think about it and make those offerings, and it's going to come to you in one way or another, either through a person or a reading, or you go there. You know, that's what I would do, is go there. That's the other thing, is that, you know, oh, we can't right now. I forgot about COVID. Dang, that darn COVID. Anyway, but yeah, plan to go there, you know, just look at the history, look at the, you know, do the, assume that you're there, assume that you're part of that already, and just go with that intention. That's the best answer I can give you to that question. Okay.
Thank you, Lakota. Any other questions that anyone else may have? Well, if not, go ahead.
What I'm gonna do too is I have a like the Indian horse. That's the name of the movie. I think it's on Prime, Amazon Prime. Almost everybody has Amazon Prime, but there's other movies that are really helpful. Anyway, I'm sorry, Patrick. I meant to send you a list previous to this, but I'll still send it to you after I'll work on it and eventually send it to you. But just a list of resources, you know, like Indian Collective, or, oh gosh, I was writing to people privately. Anyway, ways that you can, and just singing songs. I mean, that's the thing, is songs are so healing and so powerful. I'm with a group right now that we're, you know, because of COVID, we sit and we just kind of visit. But what we found is if we each offer a song and people say, well, I don't know my songs, I don't know any songs. I said, well, then make one up. You know, make one up. It's the same with studying your history. You know, you could sit there and, Miss Martinez, Sarah, if you just start writing. That's the other thing I forgot to say, is when I was in college at University of Nebraska, I was in a creative writing class. And we studied The Color Purple, the book, The Color Purple. So we were all writing, one of our assignments is to write, should read that if you haven't, by the way. Dear God, remember Seeley writes letters every day and writes, Dear God, and then tells what's going on. Well, we started doing that. And that's when I really fell in love with writing. And pretty soon I was writing a poem about the massacre at Wounded Knee, and a grandmother that was a young woman with a baby on her back and bayonets were pointing at them, and it was this powerful poem. It wasn't me, but it was one of my grandmothers who died at Wounded Knee. And I didn't make that, I just wrote it. So that's the other thing, is if you start writing, make it up. Make up the story, because they'll talk to you through that way. So that's one way you can start figuring out. And then you start having ideas, or you come across something on your phone that might connect you in that way. And trust that. You got to be open to it and trust it. Help me to live in a way that'll make my ancestors proud. That was the video that I showed when I was at Clovis the other time. And there was a couple videos I was going to show, and obviously I'm not going to, but but I am going to put one in the chat that that I want you to watch on your own after this, whenever you feel like it. Okay. It's just a go-to for me all the time, and it helps to show. So I'll put that in the chat, and we want to go on to the next question, or are we done? Or because I know it's past time.
Yeah. I do have one more person that wants to ask a question or share, and that's my coworker, Emily Aguilar. Emily, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Lakota. It's me here.
Hi.
I just wanted to say thank you for being here with us, and it was breathtaking to hear you. And I just wanted to share that my grandfather was a Yaqui Indian, and we're still trying to get a lot of information on what he, where his ancestors came from. And it's funny that you say to talk and sing, and because we had just had a memorial for my uncle who passed, and my family was just talking about the spiritual part of it, and how we were saying that we've had spiritual connections, and we've spoken to our ancestors. And my brother and I were just talking the other night, we need to get our family together and see where that came from, and to see how far back it went. And it's just so funny, because I wasn't almost not able to join today. And so, for you saying all that, it was like I was meant to be here. And I have a tree outside my window that I look at every day. And my grandmother, when she passed, she sent us a blue jay. And I don't know if you can see, but I have a tattoo right here for her. And you can see, it's kind of light, but wow. Every day there's a blue jay out in my window. And so I say, good morning, Grandma, and good morning. And it really does, to hear you say that, it was just an emphasis for me to get. And I really appreciate everything that you had said. And going through some things in my life, I had told my mom, when I was telling my brother the spiritual warfares that I've had, and I said, I actually said, I'm a warrior. And I was, at first I felt a little bit, off saying it, but I was like, no, that's where my blood is. And like how your family followed the buffalo, my family was warriors. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm not so proud of my gray hair. But my cousin said, I think it's beautiful. And I think that, you should be proud of it. And then I think about my grandma and her mother and my grandfather. And so it is something that I woke up this morning and said, oh, look at my gray hair.
Well, the thing about gray hair is that our young people need to know who to go to.
Mhm.
And that's how they identify us. So think of it that way, you know. It's been a hardship for young people whose elders are still trying to dress with the crop tops and trying to be all hip hop or clubbing, you know, when they need somebody to teach them a different way. And
Yeah.
that's, you know, I dyed my hair for years, believe me, you know, because I wanted to remain young too, especially at
Mhm.
concerts and stuff. But
Mhm.
you know, that's what I have to finally just give up the vanity and say, okay,
Yeah.
you know, this is who I am. And I still picture myself with black hair all the time. You know, every time I do something, I look in the mirror and go, oh, whoops, I forgot, you know.
Yeah.
Or I see a
And I
picture
had
of
that,
myself.
and I had that pitch black hair where it was almost blue.
Yeah.
So it was that black hair. But and the other thing I want to say is that with everything that happened with Standing Rock the last time that you were here, um, are you still, you know, doing things with them? Is there still, you know, a lot that's going on that we don't hear about? And
Well,
know,
the thing that that I want you to know is that when Standing Rock ended, like we started, I was up here in Alaska, I went down and I was there, but I also live here. So I came back here and we started the Standing Rock support committee, but then we started when Standing Rock ended, the whole purpose of that was to get people to understand and pay attention to the earth needs our help to be protected, the water, everything. It's our role to stop this exploitation and killing of the earth and all the relatives that live in the forest and live in, you know, and so we started the Herring Rock Committee to protect the herring. And I'm putting a link right now just because I was going to show this video that Taboo made, and I'm sure a lot of you know who Taboo is about Standing Rock. But it's the local work, it's the ongoing work that happens. And so it's just moved right into Black Lives Matter, right? I mean, Black Lives Matter brought all of us to attention, brought all of us together to be able to rise up and say, yeah, that's right. We're not going to sit back and pretend nothing's wrong. You know, all of it is important. We're all related. And right now, just focusing on some of the people who are locally at Standing Rock in Rapid City, South Dakota. I don't have the link for it, but on Facebook, it's called Mini Luzahan. I don't know how to spell it, but there's people taking care of the homeless because in Rapid City, the racism is so bad in South Dakota that people can just kill Indians and get away with it. And even if they get caught, they get away with it. They release them. They don't persecute them, prosecute them. So we have to protect our own homeless people. We have to protect our own. And they set up a camp in Rapid City where they are. If you go to Creek Patrol, that's the other thing is I just send money to Creek Patrol, but they're taking care of. They put up teepees. They, you know, it's like taking care. What I was saying today, taking care of our own. Helping those, and we need to do that locally, figure out where we can put our energy to take care of people, to take care of each other, to stop the exploitation, because they just do all this stuff illegally or legally through the loopholes to just all of a sudden wipe out areas of land. We all need to be conscious of what's going on in our own backyard. So that's what's continuing. Everybody is still doing things. If you're plugged in or friends with any of the people. Red Fawn just got released not too long ago. She was arrested at Standing Rock. She was in prison all this time in California, and she finally got to come home. So, and there's still people there was a protest when Trump came to Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, and a bunch of people got arrested, and they're standing, you know, trial now too. So that's where we try to support each other and help. I have to tell you, there's so many times when I want to just go back there, just go back to South Dakota, be with my family. And it's hard because I'm sure all of us want to be somewhere else right now, or, you know, we wish we could. But then I talk to people, I used to live in the Bay Area for 28 years where, you know, we have our fight there to fight the corridor, the refineries, all these things that are polluting the earth. And I call people and it's like, stay where you are. It's, it's tough everywhere, right? So I just end up staying here, do what I can here. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much again, Lakota. Thank you to everyone who came today. If we can give one more round of applause for Lakota, thank you so much for being here today.
Yay.
I put 2 links to 2 YouTube videos. The first one, I didn't put a name on there, but it's We Shall Remain. And then the other one is the Standing Rock video, which you can watch on your own if you want to or not. But thank you all for having me, and I appreciate you again. Thank your ancestors for this time. And I hope that this helped you on your path, on your way, during this time this difficult time we're in. Remember, it's the purification. We are going to get through it. We are going to make it through, to the other side, to create a better place where people are going to be respected, where Earth will be respected. We're getting there. Like my great-great-grandmother said, we're going to be there. It's just all of us are included. Wapila Kanka, thank you all so much.
Thank you, Lakota. You want to stay on just a little bit,
Sure.
Lakota? Okay, perfect.